Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know how sometimes you learn something and it just sticks with you, but other times it's like no matter how important it's supposed to be, it just goes in one ear and out the other.
It's like you can't even hold on to it.
Right. And today, we're going to really dig deep into this idea of how interest plays this huge role in what we actually learn and remember.
Because it really does.
Yeah. And to guide our deep dive today, we have this fascinating 2001 article from Educational Psychology Review.
Oh, yeah, this one's a classic.
It really is, and it's called Research on Importance and Interest, Implications for Curriculum Development and Future Research by Suzanne E. Wade.
And she really gets into the nitty-gritty of how these two forces, interest and importance, shape how we learn.
Absolutely, and there's this one anecdote right at the beginning that I think really sets the stage for this whole discussion.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
So Wade of 8, who was a social studies teacher, asks her 8th grade students what they thought was the most important thing they learned from a short biography of Abraham Lincoln. Now, what would you expect them to say?
I mean, you'd think they'd talk about the Civil War or the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right, something about
Yeah.
his major accomplishments as president.
Exactly, those key historical moments that you'd want them to take away.
But guess what the first answer she got was?
Oh, I know this one. He was tall.
He was tall.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right?
It's so funny because it's true. Like, that's the thing that stuck with them.
This tiny detail just completely overshadowed all these, major historical events.
And it makes you realize what grabs our attention isn't always what's deemed the most important.
Right, so it's not necessarily a straightforward relationship between what's important and what we find interesting.
Not at all. And for a long time, actually, the way we thought about learning was really focused on that important information. The structure of knowledge itself, the organization of it.
Okay.
Think about researchers like Kinch and Van Dyke, who developed models of how we understand text, or Meyer, who looked at how we follow the main ideas in what we read. Their work was all about how the information itself was presented and how good readers would naturally pick out the key structural elements to learn.
So it was very much focused on the material itself being well organized.
Yes, and interest was kind of like, well, if it's there, great, but it wasn't seen as the central piece of the puzzle. But then things started to shift in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
That's when researchers like Alexander Garner, Hedy Scheifel, they all started publishing studies showing a clear link between interest and some really positive learning outcomes.
Interesting.
So things like increased attention, deeper processing,
Right.
actually using effortful strategies, enjoying the process more, and ultimately learning better.
So this research really started to highlight the power of interest in making learning more effective.
It really turned things on its head.
And this is where it gets even more interesting because textbooks and learning materials in general were starting to get a reputation for being kind of well dry. Exactly. And there was this effort to make them more engaging. And that's where we get into what's called the seductive details controversy.
Ah, yes, seductive details.
So the idea was to liven things up a bit with personal anecdotes and really interesting but not really essential pieces of information.
Trying to spice things up.
Exactly, to hook the reader and make the content more appealing.
Right.
But then research started showing that this could actually backfire.
Really?
Yeah, studies by Brenner Harp and Mayer, among others, found that these interesting but irrelevant tidbits could distract you from the important stuff.
Oh, so it's like a double-edged sword.
It is. It's like you're trying to focus on a key point, but there's this shiny object right next to it pulling your attention away.
I see. So it's not just about adding anything interesting. It has to be the right kind of interesting.
Exactly.
But it wasn't all doom and gloom with the seductive details.
Okay.
Like Wade points out, there was this ongoing debate among researchers like Goetz and Sadowski about their impact. So, for instance, Schraw found that these details might not hurt learning if they didn't interrupt the flow of the text. And Sadowski argued that whether information is abstract or concrete plays a big role too.
Right.
Abstract ideas, even if they're important, can be harder to grasp than a vivid, concrete detail.
That makes sense.
So it's more nuanced than just saying all interesting extras are bad.
Right. It's about finding the right balance and making sure those details actually support the learning process.
Exactly. And this leads to a really important distinction that Roe v. Wade makes, building on the work of Hedy and Krepp.
Okay.
And that's the difference between situational interest and individual interest.
Well, that's a good one.
So situational interest is that immediate spark you feel when something in your environment catches your attention.
Like when you're scrolling through social media and a headline just grabs you.
Yeah, or a captivating image, or even just the way something is presented, that's situational interest.
Okay.
It's temporary, but it gets you focused and enjoying the activity in the moment. Individual interest, on the other hand, is much deeper and longer lasting. It's that personal connection you have to a specific topic that develops over time.
Like a passion for a particular subject.
Exactly, and it's linked to your values, positive emotions, and growing knowledge about that subject.
Yeah.
Reininger connects this to intrinsic motivation, that internal drive to do something simply because you find it rewarding.
So nurturing individual interests can be incredibly powerful for learning.
It's like fuel for the learning fire.
But the article also points out that these two types of interest, they're not completely separate, are they?
No, they're definitely interconnected.
Okay.
So like Alexander and Heedy have emphasized something that grabs your attention initially, that situational interest can actually grow into a more enduring individual interest if it's nurtured properly.
So it's like planting a seed and then helping it grow.
Exactly. And then within that initial situational interest, there's even further distinctions.
Oh, tell me more.
So we have emotional interest and cognitive interest. Emotional interest is that gut level reaction you have to something like when you encounter a really engaging story or a topic that's inherently fascinating like adventure or mystery or even humor.
Oh, yeah. Those are the things that make you want to keep reading, even if you know it's not the most important part.
Exactly. It taps into our natural human curiosity.
I see.
Now, cognitive interest is more tied to your desire to understand and make sense of the information.
Okay.
It's driven by things like how important you think the topic is, any surprises you encounter, connections to what you already know, how well you understand the material, and even the writing style.
So cognitive interest is more about that active desire to learn and make connections.
Right, and this is where you see a lot of overlap between situational and individual interest, especially around that feeling of value and personal relevance.
Okay, so now we're getting to the heart of it with the Wege-Wade et al. Study from 1999.
Oh yeah, this is a key one.
Can you walk us through what they did and what they found?
Absolutely. So they used a combination of methods. They had college students do think aloud exercises where they basically talked through their thoughts as they were reading.
Interesting.
And they also used more traditional quantitative measures to answer three main questions.
Okay.
First, what characteristics of the text itself make it interesting?
Okay.
Second, how do those characteristics relate to each other?
Okay.
And third, how does your interest in the topic combined with how important you think it is affect how well you remember the information?
Right. So they were really trying to get a comprehensive view of how interest and importance influence learning.
Exactly. And they chose dinosaurs as their topic.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah, because it's generally considered a high interest subject for a lot of people.
That's clever. So they started with something that was already engaging to see what aspects of the writing itself really fueled that interest.
Exactly. They wanted to isolate those factors.
Okay, so what did they find?
Well, they used two different types of texts about dinosaurs. An entry from Collier's Encyclopedia, which is very factual, and an article from Newsweek magazine, which aims to be both informative and entertaining.
Okay.
And what they found was that even with these different styles, the things that made the information interesting were pretty consistent across both texts.
So the style of writing wasn't the main driver of interest.
No, the content itself and how it was presented played a much bigger role.
Interesting. So what were some of the things that made the information more interesting for the reader?
The biggest one was when the reader felt the information was important, new, and valuable.
Okay.
So if it answered questions, they had presented surprising but believable facts or felt like something genuinely worth knowing that really sparked their interest.
That makes sense. If you feel like you're learning something useful and new, you're going to pay more attention.
Exactly. It's that sense of value that really hooks you.
What else stood out?
Connections were crucial. When readers could link the information to things they already knew, or when the authors explicitly made those connections through comparisons or analogies to everyday experiences, it made a huge difference.
Right. So it's about making the information relatable and helping the reader integrate it into their existing knowledge.
Exactly. And this really supports the idea of schema theory,
Okay.
that we learn new things by connecting them to our existing mental frameworks.
Makes sense. And what about the writing itself?
Well, vivid imagery and descriptive language were really effective.
So painting a picture with words helps to draw the reader in.
Absolutely. And humor in the author's voice also played a role, especially in the Newsweek article.
Okay.
Readers appreciated analogies, catchy headings, and even humorous quotes attributed to dinosaurs.
So a more personal and less factual tone can be engaging.
Yeah, but it has to be done carefully. Some readers found the humor distracting if it interrupted the flow of information.
Right. So it's all about balance.
Now, on the flip side, there were some things that made the information less interesting.
Okay, what were those?
Well, the biggest one was a lack of explanation and background information.
So if you can't understand what's being said, it doesn't matter how interesting the topic is.
Exactly. Comprehensibility was a major barrier.
Hmm.
Readers consistently said they needed more context and detail to understand difficult concepts.
Right. So clear and accessible writing is key.
Absolutely. And a lack of coherence, meaning the text felt choppy or disjointed, also hurt interest.
Frustrating.
Difficult vocabulary, particularly in encyclopedia text, was another issue.
So even if the information is important, if it's presented in a way that's hard to understand, it's going to lose its appeal.
Yes, and another interesting finding was that readers sometimes question the credibility of the information, especially in the Newsweek article.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, if something seemed implausible or went against their existing beliefs, they wouldn't just accept it.
Hmm.
They would start to critically evaluate the source and the evidence.
So the way something is written can actually influence how critically you think about it.
Exactly. It can encourage you to question and analyze rather than just passively absorb the information.
That's a really important point. So what about the second part of the Roe v. Wade study where they looked at ratings and recall?
Right. So in that part, participants either rated sentences from the dinosaur text based on how interesting and important they found them, or they read the text and then tried to remember as much as they could.
Okay.
And what they found was that for a topic like dinosaurs, which many people find interesting, the same information was often rated as both important and interesting.
So for an engaging topic, what you find interesting tends to align with what's actually important to know.
Exactly. And this means there weren't many seductive details, things that were interesting but not important.
Okay.
And then the recall task showed that participants remembered significantly more of the information that was rated as both high interest and high importance.
That makes sense. It really reinforces the idea that interest and importance are key factors in learning and memory.
Absolutely. They work together to create a powerful learning experience.
So what does all of this mean for how we should approach teaching and learning?
Well, it has some pretty big implications.
Uh,
First, it really supports the idea that we should start with topics that are inherently interesting.
Yeah, instead of trying to force interest in something that's inherently dry.
Exactly. We should focus on subjects that naturally spark curiosity.
Right, so it's about tapping into that existing interest.
Second, it highlights how important it is to make information clear and understandable.
Hmm.
Learning materials should be well-written, appropriate for the learner's level, with clear explanations, connections to prior knowledge, and careful attention to vocabulary.
So good writing isn't just about grammar. It's about making the information accessible and engaging.
Exactly. And third, B. Wade emphasizes the importance of encouraging critical thinking.
Okay.
When learners actively question the author's perspective and consider different viewpoints, it deepens their engagement.
So presenting multiple perspectives and using primary sources can be really valuable.
Absolutely. It moves away from that single objective viewpoint that's often presented in textbooks.
Right.
And research has shown that we tend to trust textbooks implicitly. So encouraging a more critical approach can lead to deeper learning.
It's about empowering learners to think for themselves.
Okay.
And the article also suggests more interactive and participatory approaches to learning, right?
Yes, where learners are actively involved in constructing their own knowledge
Okay.
through discussions, research projects, and diverse learning materials.
So it's about moving away from passive learning and encouraging more active engagement.
Right, and this connects to the idea of integrating different subjects around themes, essential questions, and real-world problems.
Like using dinosaurs to explore concepts like extinction and evolution.
Exactly. It's about creating a more connected and holistic learning experience.
So it's not just about teaching facts, but also about fostering critical thinking and deeper understanding.
Absolutely. And Wardy also points out that there's still a lot we don't know about the role of interest in learning. We need to better understand how the different types of interests work together, what makes things interesting for different people, and the relationship between prior knowledge interest and learning outcomes.
So there's still much more to explore in this area.
Definitely, we need to look at how interest changes over time, how it works in collaborative settings, and how research on interest is being used or misused in educational materials.
Right, like that example you mentioned earlier about the math textbook using commercial tie-ins to try and make it more interesting.
Exactly. That raises some ethical questions about how we're using interest to engage learners.
It's a fine line between making something engaging and manipulating someone's interest.
It really is.
So ultimately, what's the main takeaway for our listeners from this deep dive?
The key message is to recognize how powerful your own interest is in shaping what you learn. And remember,
Right.
be strategic about the information you seek out. Look for resources that are engaging, that connect to your existing knowledge, and that spark your curiosity.
Don't underestimate the value of finding something genuinely interesting.
It's not just about entertainment. It's a pathway to deeper understanding and better retention.
And on that note, here's a final thought for our listeners.
Okay.
Now that you understand how intertwined interest and learning are, what are some subjects you've always been curious about but haven't really explored yet?
Hmm.
Maybe there's a topic you've always wanted to learn more about, but you just never found the right approach.
Yeah.
Maybe actively seeking out engaging resources on those topics could unlock a whole new level of understanding and enjoyment for you.
It's definitely worth considering.
Food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of interest and learning.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, happy learning, everyone.
See you then.